Howdy y'all, this is Gabriel Guardian for the band Immortal Guardian, and this is how I head rush. We're gonna start off by showing you some of my tips and tricks with like the MIDI stuff that I do. That's probably what I get asked about the most. And it's actually pretty simple. It's just some MIDI program changes that I have coming out of a DAW going into the HeadRush. And the way I do that is you have to go into your global settings, and first you have to make sure that your program changes, send and receives are on, and all the MIDI stuff, just pretty much turn it on, you know, experiment with it. And then on the MIDI channel, just make sure you're not sharing it with something else like lasers or keyboards or whatever, because you know you want it to have its own channel of information. And then you go into the hardware assigned, and every single patch, just to kind of keep things simple, I like to go from like cold to hot. So I got clean, crunch, rhythm, and then my solo. So if I go to clean, the first one, I make my MIDI program number 1. My crunch is my second, so I make it number 2, and so on and so forth. So on my DAW, I make these tiny little clips on the timeline, and I pretty much color-coded it to be the same, so it's easy to copy and paste. And each clip has a program change itself. So if I were to play these 4 colored blocks like this, it makes it, you know, it looks like it's changing, like it's possessed on its own, but it's really just MIDI cues. And the reason I like this is that while you're playing on stage, you don't have to be worried about tap dancing or missing a cue, or I play without my glasses, so sometimes I'll push the wrong button, you know. But this way it's like guaranteed to always be on time and your changes are always correct. And in case there's like a moment where I want to go to a lead spontaneously, or if I'm playing like off the click track and playing a song that's kind of more of a freestyle kind of thing and not really like on grid, I have this cool MIDI controller that allows me to program the exact same things that my DAW is doing. So I can change my patches actually from this guy, go to clean, go to my crunch, my rhythm, my lead. And I've even added a few more toys where if I discovered something pretty interesting where I didn't see it on any of the HeadRush manuals, but when I was messing around with some CC values, I noticed that I could not only change, if you hold this and you go to hybrid view, it shows you half of like your actual presets, and then the other half are pedals within the presets. So I found out that you can actually map these pedal buttons via MIDI. So I was using CC values, I think like 50 through like 60. I'll post them in the comments below so you guys can check that that information out. But I make it so that I can turn on these bottom pedals with these buttons. So if I want to turn on flanger, I can turn it off, this one here. Or if I know that the song is going to want flanger, I can just manually turn on flanger to turn it on for that particular preset rather than switching to an entire another preset that has flanger on it. Just kind of keeps it easier to only have like 4 or 5 program changes rather than like 15 or 20 for every little change you want to make. And the best part about it is that the latency and the carry on of like the notes is like pretty fast. So I never have like, you never hear like a long hiccup or a long load time. And that's pretty much how I covered like a lot of my MIDI stuff. And I also like to mix it with like other stuff I have in Ableton. So it's a hybrid of HeadRush effects with Ableton effects. So I can do like stutters. Crazy whammy stuff that's on here. I can slide around with all these different filters and stuff. I even got like a dive bomb thing that's like kind of like Guitar Hero. It detects like the motion. So it pushes my dive bomb for me. So pretty cool. And yeah, that's pretty much all the nerdy MIDI stuff. If you guys have any questions, like don't be afraid to ask, because I love this stuff and I love helping people out. And jumping into the audio stuff, this is where it gets pretty neat. I'm not so great at audio, but I had the help from my buddy Joshua Lopez at Widowmaker Studios. He helped me come up with these patches. So I got to give a shout out to my boy, but I only really use like about maybe 5 patches in a show, but I got a nice little 11-pack bundle you guys should get off the internet. So you guys can totally check out these tones too and have my IRs. But to keep things simple, I just run into a black wall, to a gain, the green gain pedal, into a gate. That's like the only thing I pretty much adjust every night, depending on how loud my amp's gonna be on stage. Run it into a 89 SL100 extended range head, And then I have my own custom IR that I like to use as the cab. And it's called the GG Guitar Cab IR, which you can also get on the website. I use a dynamic delay just to give it that little extra, solo boost. I got a graphic EQ, and then the flanger and chorus is just kind of there if I feel like triggering it on at any time, just being spontaneous. But what I like about the HeadRush is the multiple outputs. So I use the XLR outputs to go directly to front of house in my in-ears. So it's a really nice consistent tone. Don't have to worry about, you know, like if the mic got knocked out of the cab or if something changed during sound check, it's always gonna sound exactly the way I made it in the studio. Every rehearsal, every tour, everything. So that's probably my favorite part, is just the consistency of tone. But if I want to run it to a cab, what I do is I go through an alternative output. You go to your global settings and you set your amp/line output to be an alternative rig instead. And I send the source to be the IR input. And the reason I do that, for those of you that might not know what an IR is, it's pretty much like a cab simulator. So when you run a cab simulator, it just sounds like, sounds great, but when you run a cab sim into an actual cab, it's like kind of doubling the tone and it sounds kind of nasty. So what I will do is I'll make the path that goes to the XLR and in-ears in the front of house with an IR, and then the path that goes to the cab have no IR. So it's like no cab, yes cab, and it just sounds super cool on all ends. And this is the cabs I usually use just for stage volume, but it makes it sound really, really nice. And just like everybody else, you know, you can have like hundreds of patches, but you know, I only use 5, and I scroll through the menu with this guy right here. And that pretty much wraps up the majority of my tone, guys. So this is Gabriel Guardian, and this is how I HeadRush.